What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back with another episode. It's your favorite professors. I'm Professor CK, and with me always, he's a swarthy man. I've heard swarthy during a lot of the research. No, I think that you can be swarthy in a good way, can't you? Suave? I've always thought suave and swarthy is swarthy like the shit version of suave.
I think
like you're being like dirty suave.
Swarthy's like
Unwantedly suave, I think is what swarthy is probably, right?
Swarthy's like giving somebody a compliment and being nice to them while having your hand in their pocket, I feel like.
Or down there, just down their pants to a degree.
Yeah, yep.
Well,
I'll
the
take
man
swarthy.
to my left, he's a man that has invested in several racehorses, none of which have turned out well. So this week, he's decided to make the switch to bulls. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Professor AG.
Thank you, sir. You are right. We are full bowl this week.
All bull, none of the shit.
Something that's kind of shown up in my brain. It didn't help doing the Roman Coliseum episode before this, but bullfighting has always astounded me.
Yeah, you came hard in with this. Like, you knew that you wanted to do this, and I was like, how the fuck had we not thought of this?
Yeah, it's an easy sell because as Americans, we don't really understand it. Anything
We do human
I think about
bullfighting
it
here.
Like,
We've taken it to the level of now we do human bullfighting without the death.
Yeah, I mean, we just try to ride them, and they just try to kill them.
Oh, I meant like UFC.
Oh, yeah.
We just started beating the shit out of each other.
Not to the death, though. Yeah.
No. I'm telling you right now, were it not for certain laws, there would be some type of death match.
Yeah, I would say 100%. So. I think that's
human
kind of
cockfighting, cockfighting.
That's the only thing that holds our society together is that there's just rules against murder, so we can't do this. But before we jump into going to Spain and hitting the bullfighting ring, just one little request. We are very close to 100 reviews on Spotify, or 100
subscribe.
rates. So if we could nail that 100 rates, if you want to do 5 stars until we get to 100, that would be excellent. I'm not going to beg you, but please.
I'm not above begging. I'll fucking beg.
Yeah. Also, subscribe. Give us a comment or review on Amazon or on Apple. That would be fantastic. I don't know what Amazon does. I'm sure they. If
you can find us on Amazon, review us and rate us high everywhere you can find us.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's pull out our capes. Let's sheath our swords and let's head.
Our swords. I'm unsheathing mine as we speak.
Okay, let's head to the Creole.
Ole! All right, we are going to Spain, El España.
I might already be in Spain, buddy. We before the episode, we threw in a new strain that we hadn't tried before, and sort of went into it full mast. So things could get interesting.
I was gonna say Adam started to going down the rabbit hole, and so I was like, I'm not letting you go down there by yourself. I hooked up and slid down that cave with him. No, so we're going back to, it's not ancient Spain even. I mean, it kind of is, right?
We'll go back to ancient Spain and kind of talk about how bullfighting really came to be and the stories.
Should we establish our stance on bullfighting first?
Yeah, anti. I don't know if I've ever been more anti anything, which is going to make this episode tough because when I say anti...
I am pro-anti bullfighting.
You got to remember that this is a very cultural thing in Spain. And I don't understand everybody else's cultures, but it's...
I feel like we've shit on ours enough.
Yeah.
That we can do it without, ruffling any feathers, considering that we're spreading it around evenly.
Yeah, it is culture. I get that it happens. I don't want to say that I judge people that enjoy the hell out of it because it's something that's just completely out of my wheelhouse.
That's the one word that's used as the best argument for it. When people want to argue about how it should still be in practice, it's because it's tradition or culture. And it's like, that's true, but we also have a culture of a lot of fucking ugly shit. Other countries, once you get that, here's my stance on it, and then we'll get into the history of it. If I understand that it may have been something of a tradition and a culture back, in the early days of Spain or when it first started and everything like that. It's kind of like it's on the board. It seems kind of contested on the exact origins of it, but some of the origins, they all kind of make sense and then meet at a certain point, I think.
Yeah, I do see how everything comes together, but to hide behind something like this as a culture, I mean, I think of any of the cultures back in the day where they touched kids. It's like if you get arrested for touching a kid in that country now, and that's your defense, is like, it's my culture to touch kids. Like, you can't really do that in that situation, so I don't know if you can really get a pass now.
That's my whole point, is I think it was your entertainment. It was a form of entertainment back then. You then create, as your technology and your society progresses, other forms of entertainment, which should then take out that form of entertainment. To hold on to something like that when there's so many other things that you could be doing is pretty nuts. Or to not have it at least evolve. Because I'm telling you right now, there is a way that I could be pro bullfighting.
Me too.
Is it if it was complete? Okay, we're going to come back to this because let's explain how it actually goes down. Yeah. And then we'll explain what we would like, what would change our minds for bullfighting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that.
And this plays into how I've told you many times that I only feel like I would go deer hunting. So, sort of the same idea.
You're going to have to explain it to me later.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so take me back, Adam.
Bullfighting is really kind of contested. I didn't realize that Europe and kind of the Mesopotamia area and just like northern Africa, Italy, I think, is like translated into like land of the bulls or some shit like that.
It's, I think, why the Lamborghini has the bull.
Could be.
Its logo.
Absolutely
I think
could
there's
be.
Something to do with that.
Yeah, car guys maybe hit us up and explain or confirm that. But it's just kind of one of those things where I really had no idea.
Yes, they named certain models of Lamborghini after bulls.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if Aventador or anything like that, but I think in America we just didn't have them, so maybe that's why they were kind of out of my purview. But they've moved up into like second favorite animal on my ranking list, just because I didn't realize.
What's the first?
Bears.
Ooh, where do gorillas fall for you? Did they supplant gorillas?
Yeah, gorillas. I can't call them an animal.
Okay, I think
once you lock eyes with a gorilla, and you know that guy's as smart as you.
You got to throw these three into a mental cage match, and then let the victor be number one.
It's the bull's number one, though.
Okay.
I fully believe, and we'll
so now
get
it's
into
number one.
why.
You just went from number two to number one.
Yeah, but I could hang out and cuddle
close to your
with a
heart
bear
right now, and I think that's why.
Yeah. But the origins in Spain really kind of range from anything like the ancient Mesopotamians. There's an island by Spain called Crete.
Yes.
And they actually had like bull worshipping like cult religions.
Mm-hmm. That's where you get the legends of, I think, King Midas, and then the legends of the Minotaur because it's the half bull and everything. So there's shit that comes from there as well, from like Greek mythology and stuff. Because Minos, Minotaur, that's what it was.
You have, just as we talked about a couple weeks ago, the Roman Colosseum was a pretty big deal, and they fought a lot of different animals, and I think bulls may have been one of them.
I think we listed it. And if you think about it too, the readily available stock of bulls in that area, anyone that was raising cattle would have bulls. It's not like, I think if anything, you probably saw bulls the most, just because bears and tigers and lions, those are having to be coming in from like kind of the outskirts of the empire. You can just go over to freaking Romulus's house and be like, hey, you got any bulls? We're short on bulls tonight. He's like, I got one out back.
Yeah, Reggie's out back. Yeah. I'll load him up. We'll take him down there. It only really stands to reason that does make a lot of sense to me, just because we know what the Colosseum looked like. And the Roman Empire took over Spain at a point,
yes, exactly.
So
look no further than the movie Gladiator, because Maximus is actually Spanish.
Is he?
Yes, because they're talking where he lives.
Well, he's Australian, but he's supposed to be Spanish?
Correct, but yes, he's an Australian playing a Roman general, a Spanish Roman general.
Okay. Yeah,
the man has fucking range.
Makes sense if you don't think about it. The Islamic Moors, which I just found out doing this research, we'll have to go into it and study the Moors. Didn't know that Islam and Moors were the same thing.
I was familiar with the Moors in Scotland. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's more of where I was going for. That's That's all I know. It's going to have to be something we look into.
Yeah.
They really could have modified it with some of their traditions and just the things that they had done. Because, like I say, Northern Africa has like a bull culture. So even them coming up into Spain, they're going to kind of add their twist and their look on things.
I mean, there's tons of cultures throughout, history that worshipped bulls and everything, and that some still do as deities or have something to do with their deities.
Yeah, and shit. I mean, the Lamborghini thing.
Yeah,
like that's probably Italy's greatest export. Pasta Lamborghini is probably like 1, 2.
Yeah, something like that. I'm
Maybe
sure you
models
could find,
is 3. Something
I'm sure
like
you
that.
could probably find some other stuff. You also have
not tomatoes.
No, surprisingly enough, we'll cover that in something else. No, and then you have one of the most beloved current people in the United States whose nickname is the Brahma Bull.
Oh shit! What?
What do you mean? What?
Just the nickname Brahma Bull.
Yeah.
Okay.
He recently acquired a bull too, a Brahma bull that he's.
I thought you were trying to tell me that The Rock was Italian, and we were about to have words.
No. Don't count him out playing Italian.
Yeah,
at a certain point.
He's got that year-round tan, so he could probably pull it off. It's really, I think the bull is a symbol that may not be used as much, or it's just sort of hidden in culture. Because when I think of a bull in America, like I think of bull riding, but at the same time, when I think of a bull, I just think of what you were talking about with like the Colosseum, just bulls on ranches that are hanging out to impregnate cows.
If you're into F1, it's pretty prominent. They have actually 2 teams that are Toro Rosa or something like that, and then the Red Bull team.
It's like NASCAR, man. I can only watch people turn left and right for so long.
Hey, NASCAR only turns one direction. It's a little
turn
faster
too.
and a little more technical in F1.
But that's it. It's like, and corner.
You're going to have to sit through an F1 episode. You realize that, right?
No. That's the issue. Sorry, we're off track, but you don't sit through an episode of F1. You're supposed to watch a race.
No, I'm going to make you sit through an episode of this podcast while I teach you about Formula 1.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Getting back to bullfighting, sorry. So the thing that I kind of looked into as well on this is it started out as something that was only really for, the aristocracy, which we keep getting off topic. Are there ever those words for you that you look at it and you know how to pronounce that word, but when it comes out of your mouth, it's always wrong?
Yeah.
Like aristocracy, and then you're looking and you're like, no, it's aristocracy.
Catholicism.
Yes. Catholicism.
Yeah, I know exactly how it should sound when it comes out of my mouth, but it doesn't.
So what I saw was that it was something that they would do for like, you have, certain players in a bullfight. And one of those players, or 2 of them, are the picadors. Mm-hmm. Just so we have some terminology, picadors are basically these guys. They're lancers, is what they are, and
they're lancers on horses.
Yes, but that's where the aristocracy part of it, or aristocratic part of it, came in. Is people that were well-to-do would do these types of like bullfights, but they were guys on like horses with spears that were basically like killing these bulls.
Well, and it's crazy to think that aristocrats were the only ones that had like a spare horse that they could bring into a fight with a bull, like expecting to lose and it be okay. Like
so many horses fucking die.
But would that just like shake up a normal like middle class Spanish person to lose their horse?
Maybe
like that their ride to work the next day?
Is it one of those things too where you're just so bored being rich and you could just have all this fucking wealth that you're just like, why don't we just like try to fight some bulls?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could definitely see it. I wonder because just in doing this research, I had no idea that bulls were as calm as they are just at rest, like in nature. Mm-hmm. They just seem like they're the
domesticated nature, not like nature.
I even think nature, man. I think that they're just not that aggressive.
Do you think there's places where there's just wild bulls up in the hills, like roaming around?
I don't think they. If you walked into their little cattle pack, I don't think that they would kill you. I think they would probably look you over and be real curious about you. But I don't think that they would ever see you as a natural predator.
I think some do.
Maybe.
I think more of the ones, like if you crawl into like a bull pen here, like where bulls have been like used to seeing people and like been fucked with, I think they're going to come after you.
Do you think that they'll...
It's part of the fucking saddest part about this, though.
Yeah.
About the bulls that they use here is that there's no... We'll get into it.
Do you think that our feelings of bulls being aggressive comes from watching bull riding?
100%. But I've also seen videos. I also know, and I've also been in close proximity to actual bulls. It may be that they have And it may be the situations that I was in proximity. Like, I've been close to, like, a bull, like riding four-wheelers by him, like up in the mountains when they free range and everything.
With a big machine that makes a lot of noise.
Making noise. And not only that, but there's, like, actual, like, cows around, too. And so I'm like, fuck. Like, if I get, because I have to ride between them, like, it's maybe 20 feet separating when they're free. And so you're like, is it going to think that I'm trying to fuck with its, like, ladies over here? So, and these things too, also the ones we have here and for bullfighting and everything, they're much larger than the ones they use.
Well, the ones that they use are specifically built and designed, and we'll get into that
and
too.
And were bred
for what
and
they do.
kept being bred for this specific purpose.
Yeah, that's the design, was just breeding aggressive, good fighting bulls to create super bulls.
Not even
to continue
aggressive.
On. Well, you have to think that if one of them was super aggressive in the ring, that would be like, okay, that's in their bloodline. Like, once they got scared enough to actually charge.
Yes, once they were forced to display that aggression, then yes, you would probably promote that bloodline, yeah.
I could definitely see it, and we'll actually see in just a fantastic story that we're going to kind of keep towards the end to cap it off. A man named Manolete. Just a tragedy, a real tragedy. And I say that with a smile on my face, because after we talk about all the bad shit they do to bulls, it's a real win for us.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So you also have its founding in, like, religious festivities and, like, royal weddings and everything like that. So you would have to have something to eat for the ceremony. Mm-hmm. So you would have somebody bring in a bull. No?
Did you not hear the wedding traditions?
No, go. I thought that they would actually bring that in as part, like the groomsmen or something like that. Would actually run with it or try to, like, herd it towards
Stab it. Basically do what not the picadillos, but the bandolieros do.
Yes, the bandolieros.
They're just stabbing it and trying to wear it down. Then they will actually bring it to the bride's house, and they will have the bride who decorated one of the bandoliers that they stick into them, like for their wedding, like wedding decorations. One of the guys will stick it in
like a centerpiece.
So they'll
like
just
a floral arrangement.
Just absolutely fuck with this bull to the point of it's about dead from stabbing it, doing whatever they can. Then they get this bandolier in the back.
It was almost like they were like, come on out. And like the townspeople during this wedding to celebrate. Everyone would come take like a crack at this bull.
And they did that too, where they would bring them into squares and just, everybody would pick up a weapon and attack them.
Can you fucking imagine that? You just hear a ding, 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 and everyone's like reaching for a fucking knife on the table. Get out there, kids! Get out there!
Well, like you see a bull that's standing in the square, and the first thought is, "Holy fuck, there's a bull there."
You open your door, and you're like, "Nope, not going outside."
Yeah, but over there, they're like you say, they're grabbing for a butter knife or a steak knife. They're like, "Hey, let's go out and stab the bull." Mm-hmm. That's just a crazy mentality to have. But once they got the bandolier in the back of it, the wedding bandolier in the back of it, then they would take it to the butcher. They would have the butcher it for the meals. Mm-hmm. Then they would also spread the blood on the bed sheets that the bride and groom were going to stay in, because bulls are a sign of virility.
Was it also on their clothes?
Yes.
On their wedding dress or in whatever he was wearing?
Yeah, because it was a sign that you were virile, you were strong, you were brave.
Strong like bull.
Which is a crazy thing to have that much respect for, to put it in a marriage ceremony and then just do this to bulls.
Do you think that's why all of those gas station like boner pills and all this stuff supposed to give you energy always has like a bull, or like half of them have a bull on it?
Well, you get a good chub, you're strong like bull.
That's right.
That's just the saying.
He's so strong.
Just the way that we kind of see bullfighting start to change is what you were alluding to with the noblemen, the aristocrats that started kind of the sport of bullfighting by jumping on their horses because they were the only ones that had horses that they could use.
The Spanish did bullfighting. The English did fucking tennis and everything for their aristocratic sport. Yeah. The Scottish did golf and everything. So you're like, oh, it's a sport. We're going to hit some stuff with sticks. Oh, we're going to hit some stuff with a racket. No, we're just going to fucking kill something.
The French, no, because I'm sure it was a poor job for the French to bake, but they
croquet?
Wine? Yeah, maybe croquet.
Maybe croquet.
I can see that. Croquet has to be a French word, right?
Croquet. Yeah, it sounds French.
Could be.
Yeah.
But we see it come into the modern era kind of after. Yeah.
There's a lull where the royal, or the aristocratic social class, doesn't it kind of go out of style? Because it comes into kind of vogue and then goes out of vogue. And then one guy finally is just like, we can do this for the common person.
Well, the big change was it went from these fancy, famous, rich people on these horses to Francisco Romero being like, nah, fuck the horse. I'm doing this shit on foot.
I don't have a horse.
Yeah, I don't have a horse,
I'm
but
missing
I want
the
to do
horse,
this
so I
shit.
gotta fucking do this on foot.
And that was 1726. So we've come a very long way where through these centuries, it just started to sort of grow into what we know. Sort of like, there's still, I'm sure, religious aspects that they'll try to justify in it. But it changed from a religious and kind of marital ceremony.
Running through the village, ceremonies running through the village with a bowl and stabbing it, and then the bride coming out and being like, my expensive, smear that blood all over.
Just the, I don't know, man. They did some weird shit back in the day. But then you see it go to kind
current
of
ones.
Huh?
Can you imagine that being a current Spanish wedding? Like, what are you gonna have I'd like the chicken or the fish. Are like, oh no, that's not an option. We actually just butchered a bull outside, so it's steak for everyone.
That's the other thing. I don't think bull tastes good. I don't think bull would be great.
No.
It's too muscular. But we saw it turn into a kind of a rich person aristocrat thing. And then Francisco Romero was like, I'm doing this shit on foot because I probably don't have a bull. He is actually the first inventor of using the muleta, which is the cape with the piece of wood through it, which they use. Normally they say that it's red. I'm sure you want to break that myth.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of them that are like pink. The whole
bulls are colorblind.
Bulls are colorblind. So the whole myth behind bulls seeing red and charging and everything like that, it's bullshit. What it actually is the movement of the cape. And you're like, well, why wouldn't the bull just be distracted by the cape? Why wouldn't it just go after the guy? Because he's also wearing a brightly colored outfit. Again, they're colorblind. I think this allows us to kind of move into knowing what they're going to be fighting against, to kind of maybe explain why they're able to, like, I guess the type of bulls, because it does have some bearing on this.
Well, back then they were mostly wild. They were mostly just on farms that they would either procure for their own herd or.
And when you say wild, you just meant like not used to human interaction.
I would say non-native, because I would bet that they were before, when it was still kind of a rich, fancy person's thing. They weren't breeding these bulls, especially after. Yeah. Which we'll talk about where we come with the War of Spanish Succession and just the French influence. That was really when the noblemen and the rich people were like, we don't want to do this anymore, but we still need to make money because all the poors really like it. And we need to take their money. So that's when they move kind of towards the back half of the game.
Essentially building out the industry that is this bull breeding shit.
Yeah, and you need like two things for a bullfight. You need a human and you need a bull.
Yeah.
So if they're going to supply the human, you need to make sure that they're buying the bull from you so you can still get your beak wet.
Yes.
But yeah, Francisco Romero also pulled out, I think it's called, or it's pronounced the estoque. It's a hilted sword. And that just really started to add some flair. The hilted sword we'll talk about because it plays a very dark role towards.
And it's not like a scimitar or like anything like that. So it's basically, think of what it kind of seems like a thicker fencing sword because it's got a little bit of curve to it. So in a way, like a samurai sword, kind of, but like a Spanish flavor samurai sword, because those are kind of a curved blade.
Yeah,
it's meant for stabbing. It's not meant for slashing. Well, so it's structurally meant for stabbing. So which means like it's not a claymore where it's huge and thick.
But it still has to be somewhat straight at that point because a slashing weapon's always going to be curved so it can draw the blade through.
It's usually going to be thicker so it doesn't bend.
Yeah. Where you have this, it was almost like...
a rapier?
Yeah, I would say just like an enlarged dagger almost, because it had the hilt on it, so when you were to stab in, you wouldn't go in too far, because nobody wants to see...
to keep your hand from sliding forward and to keep your hand protected.
Part of the reason, yes, but if it only goes in so deep, then you don't get your kill shot till you want to do your kill shot. And this is when kind of the idea of like putting on a show kind of forms in their mind. And that took place, like I say, after the Spanish Succession, because that was Francisco Romero wasn't a nobleman. He was just kind of a regular guy that wanted to do this.
That's what it was. So that kind of reminded me. So with the War of Spanish Succession and you get all this French influence, all the nobles are like, fuck bullfighting. We're doing all the French shit. We're doing all the clothes and the fancy shit. Like the ball, like the dances and all of that more
cotillions. It literally came about because after the War of Spanish Succession was up, because it was, I forgot who the Spanish president was or the Spanish ruler that died. He didn't have kids. So this just turned into like a big fight for the crown of Spain, we talked about this in the Pirates episode. That was a place that was just kind of up for grabs at that point. And Philip, who turned himself into Philippe, I'm sure that was to ingratiate himself to the Spanish people.
Which is weird because they called him Philippe in France, too.
Could be. But yeah, he was a Frenchman. So if your king now is a Frenchman and you want to get in good with him, all the nobles started flocking towards doing French shit. Like, they sort of left the Spanish culture unto the regular
You're just
people.
Assimilating into that culture.
Yeah.
With the current, power, who's ever currently in power.
Well, it's like when the gang cracks the Liberty Bell and Dennis dresses up like an Englishman and he goes, yes! Yeah, he was trying to ingratiate himself to Colonel Cricket and try to win over the favor of the English. So these Spanish people did the exact same thing. These aristocrats did the exact same thing. They started doing things that were more French-related, and at that point, bullfighting really wasn't a French thing. They were more of like the laissez-faire, which seems weird because we know what Napoleon did.
If you boil this down, though, you can definitely see the French culture being like, that's way too unrefined for us.
Well, that's upper crust brutal. French culture.
Yeah. So essentially, by taking it out of the hands of, the aristocracy in Spain, all of a sudden now it gets moved into a more accessible hands of like, not the common like peasant folk, but folks that want to do this and have the ability to go watch this as entertainment. Or to be the people that are putting on the entertainment to make money.
Yeah, it's not, these are bigger events now, and that's where you start to see them going from fighting them in the town squares to bull rings. And the history of bull rings is just really pretty incredible.
Same principle as the Colosseum. So it's a ring because it doesn't allow anything to back itself into a corner.
Well, yeah, bullfighting stadiums, they're just called bull rings now, but they date back to the 1700s. That's how far back they go. Mm-hmm. So the oldest two are, there's one in Seville and there's one in Ronda. And their seating capacity is always in the circle like you talk about. Mm-hmm. But also some of them, as you look at them, the influence of the architecture on the outside, like, sort of looks like Moorish. Mm-hmm. Some of it sort of looks Italian, a la a Colosseum. So, like, you can almost see the different influences where maybe cultures had done things in certain regions that stuck, and then they just continued that architecture when they built bull rings.
Now, this isn't the only place that they're at is in Spain.
No, surprisingly enough.
Yes.
So the biggest one is in Mexico City.
Mexico City.
And that one is huge.
The Plaza de Toros in Mexico City holds 41,000 plus. Pretty good size to watch a murder match. But you also have them in Portugal, which isn't surprising because it's shoehorned
next door,
into Spain.
Neighbors.
And then you also have them in South America where you have a ton of Spanish influence, a la killing everybody down there.
Well, and once the Spanish nobles figured out how cool bullfighting was, they started exporting bulls to South America because they're like, hey, there's rich people down here running this that want to see this shit. Let's send them some. Let's start building a culture down there. There's so many different places. I think I even saw that it was in America in 1926 they banned bullfights. I'm not positive on that, but I know that there was like states in America. Puerto Rico's banned bullfighting. I mean, that's kind of obvious. I think they had a lot of Spanish influence too, being an island on the way to South America. I could see it
trying to gain a foothold here at a certain point, within the last 100 years, and after about 2 matches being like, yeah, this probably isn't for us.
Well, they're like, we'll just watch them race horses and then watch a horse break its leg and watch them have to put it out of its misery there. Like, that doesn't happen nearly as often. A bullfight is always going to end in a bull dying.
Yes.
Whereas a horse race may not.
That's true. So we have in the main focus of this is going to be what everyone thinks about. It's going to be the Spanish style of bullfighting. And that's referred to as corrida de toros. And basically the structure of a Spanish bullfight.
You do pretty good with your R's.
I try. I can't even roll my R's though. I can't.
I sound like an old Buick trying to start in the cold. Just
I can't fucking roll my tongue either.
But we have the man who developed the Spanish style of bullfighting, Juan Belamonte. He's credited with developing the modern style of bullfighting. He was a paunchy little bastard, but
he was not what you would picture as if you picture a bullfighter. Even cartoonish one, and I'm going to make references to Ferdinand several times during this episode.
Never seen it. Yeah.
Okay. So, John Cena voices Ferdinand. There you go.
Oh,
There's
hell
your connection to it. The story of Ferdinand is old as shit, and it's about the giant bull, and he just likes to smell flowers and be chill and everything, which, surprisingly enough, is not that far removed from how these bulls actually like to behave when they're not being fucking murdered. And so...
Makes sense.
The matador comes to pick a bull for his fight, and he's the stereotypical. He's lanky, the grease back hair and everything, the goatee and the mustache, the flair and all that shit. So that's people's general thought when you're thinking of a bullfighter. It also makes sense because you don't want a lot of muscle out there because you're a big fucking target and you can't move as fast.
Yeah, but that's where Juan really kind of was the antithesis of what you would assume as a bullfighter, because he had shitty short legs. Mm-hmm. I think he was a paunchy fella.
He was like knock-kneed or something where he didn't have a lot of speed.
They said ugly as sin, just a face that I think there was like newspaper articles that said like not even a mother would love.
Something like that. Are we thinking like, who's the guy from Panama? Manuel?
Could be, pineapple face, yeah.
A little bit of that. So... the whole thing before Belamonte comes along, and he was alive from 1892 to 1962. So we're moving up even more so.
Tremendously long for a bullfighter.
Yes. And prior to that, there was a lot more movement from the matador as far as like moving out of the way of the bull and then, using the cape to distract and that kind of stuff. Belamonte's whole thing was that he's like, I'm not going to be able to outmove these, current matadors and everything. So I'm going to develop a style that is basically going to cater to getting the bull insanely close. 6 fucking inches. They said that's like the sweet spot.
You got to have some balls to do it. For as much as I hate these guys, their level of taking risks for the reward of cheers is incredible.
So this was the analogy. Prior to Belamonte, the sport of bullfighting was the act of moving around the bull. Belamonte turned it into the act of moving the bull around you. Kind of seems like sumo, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's actually a good comparison.
So Belamonte developed a style where he would literally just use the movements of the cape and slight movements of his body to allow the bull to get extremely close. They said in some situations within 1 inch of his thigh and abdomen. In some pictures,
you measure that. You would think, well, I guess their pants were really tight, which is
everything
weird.
was tight, and you had the jacket that was almost like a half jacket, like the ladies like to wear sometimes. And yeah, so you're not getting caught there. So everything is very tight, but
you would have to think that there would be like a drag mark on his pants or something.
This
1 inch is incredibly close.
This to me is the invention of the forward pass in football.
Yeah,
it completely revolutionized, and all of a sudden, people are now watching this guy allow this bull to essentially graze by him and completely control this thing. And so every matador at this point now has to move away from the style of like, I have to try to dodge the bull to making the bull dodge around my body.
Yeah, and he fell into a weird kind of competition that morphed into an actually like really, really close friendship with, I don't remember.
The young gun, the up-and-comer, Joselito, or Little Jose.
Yeah, I don't remember his whole name. All I remember is Joselito because it was so much easier to remember.
So this was when Belamonte was actually like on the rise and an established bullfighter. He was famous.
He's a big deal, yeah.
And these guys, when we say famous, these guys like major, like the top matadors, was it 100,000 that they could make during a bullfight?
I don't think it was that much because we have to move all the way to 1947 to run into the richest bullfighter, again, Manolete. But just to give you an idea of how big his career was, I think they said that he had killed 1,800 bulls.
Yeah.
So he's had 1,800 bullfights.
And so in the structure, and we'll go back to kind of letting you know what happens in a bullfight, kind of as we're speaking about other stuff. There's 3 matadors assigned to a bullfight. There are 6 bulls per bullfight. Each matador will fight 2 bulls. So you'll go 1, 2, 3, then go back 1, 2, 3.
And really that structure is just because everybody has their own certain style and flair. So you want to kind of mix it up because the crowd reaction is the biggest thing that you're going to get. And I'm sure after performing like that, you're probably tired of shit.
They said you were fucking, the mental exhaustion had to be crazy. Like, you're literally just like, am I going to die? Is the bull going to get me? Is the bull going to get me? And not to say that the bull shouldn't have got these motherfuckers, but
every one of them.
So it kind of reminds me of when you look at, I mean, there had to be people who, when the posters went up outside the bull ring, like a fucking comedy show or like a great band lineup and being like, these are the comedians we're going to see, or these, like, you saw like an all-star lineup as like your favorite matadors. That had to be a big fucking deal.
Oh yeah.
So you would sometimes have, this rivalry. You would have Belamonte going against Joselito, not technically head to head, but who could put on the better show in the crowd?
Yeah, and they formed, despite Joselito being kind of a hot shot and saying
16. He started at fucking 16.
They talked a little bit of shit, and they ended up becoming.
You might not even have hair on your balls, and you're lit in this fucking 14-pound or 1,400-pound instrument of death, just fucking dance around you. Well, albeit at a severe disadvantage.
They became fast friends to the point of like they found each other on a train and were hanging out, and actually had to leave separately when they got there because they just thought the fans' heads would explode.
Yep, to keep up the appearance. Oh, that's right. It was because it would blow their fucking minds that these guys who were perceived as rivals, and everything, were somehow, friendly.
When in all reality, Joselito said that he took a lot of kind of the stone stance that Belamonte had, and almost said, "Belamonte is this brave. I need to be this close to what he is to try to make myself better."
Yes, if I'm going to surpass him as a bullfighter, I have to not only take his style and that thrilling style, I have to even make it more thrilling.
And Belamonte kind of said the exact same thing about Joselito, just about how he took the confidence and almost the arrogance, the brashness that Joselito had, and kind of wanted to use it too. Unfortunately, Joselito was not meant for this world. And there was it was a fight with
Belamonte and them on the same card.
Yeah, yes. And Belamonte just finished up. Joselito was out there. Fantastic routine. And just by the stroke of bad luck, the bull that he was fighting, his name was Bailando. No, it wasn't Bailando. It was something dancer.
Yes,
basically.
The dancer. Yep.
But it's like Bailandito or something like that. But this bull ended up being blind in one eye, which you would think would be a super big advantage.
The bull can't see me.
Yeah.
But the bull can't fucking see you.
The bull also can't focus in on the cape where you want it to focus in on the cape, because it's only seeing out of one eye that's on the side of its head.
Maybe it thinks the cape is 6 inches bigger on the other side and it has that room.
It turns out Bailando really ended up thinking that and decided to bury I believe it was his left horn, just deep in his abdomen, wasn't it?
No, yes. He basically, it was a bull seppuku. It basically just split him, because they said that as he actually, I don't know if he died on the actual ground.
Yeah, he didn't make it out of the ring.
But he was holding his guts in, or trying to hold his guts in, and they said his last words were like, "Mother" or "Mama, I'm drowning," and basically was killed by the bull there. And so, that kind of goes to show you, I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. That should be the expectation a lot more often. And surprisingly enough, it did not happen as often with as many bullfights have gone on and how many bulls died during even a calendar year or the season. I thought it was going to be way higher for matadors.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about why I think that number is less shocking by the time we get to explaining it all.
We actually talk about the structure and what happens leading up to it. But yeah, so that was the end of Joselito, and that kind of shook Belamonte to the core. And he retired, I think, 2 years after that.
He retired 3 times in his career, because that's how much they loved him, and that's how much adoration he wanted.
He kept getting called back in.
Yeah, he kept retiring and unretiring. He just Brett Favre this shit.
I was going to say, he's like a goddamn pro wrestler too.
Yeah, that too. He's the Hulk Hogan of bullfighting. And his body was so beat up by the end of his career that they basically just told him, like, you're not going to be able to do this. I understand that you have a statue style of doing this, but if anything goes even a little bit wrong, you're not going to be able to run off the bull ring. Yeah. Like, your ass is dead. And unfortunately, Hemingway, I found out, and I think you probably did too, he was like the biggest American bullfighting fan ever. Hemingway, a tremendously flawed, weird man.
It's very weird too, because he describes it in a way that a lot of people look at it, like kind of with the disdain and all that kind of stuff. But he was, weirdly enough, and I'm not saying I can see this, but the way that he talks about it, he was able to like compartmentalize the acts or the beauty or the artistic aspect of it. I'm not, again, using it as an excuse, but he writes about it in that sense, but then he has certain gripes about like the way that it goes down. It was weird, conflicting views on it, but yeah, he was still a fan.
Bullfighting got Hemingway's dick so hard.
Yes.
And he didn't consider it a sport or an art or anything, but he fucking loved it.
And it's going to make sense when we actually do Hemingway for an episode, but he was the guy that went on fucking safari in Africa and just shot shit. So, I mean, there was a part of him that really enjoyed that type of shit.
Yeah, animals' lives were just at the cost of a piece of lead for him.
Yes, yep.
So, these bulls that these guys... Oh, shit. Where was I headed with the Hemingway thing?
Sorry. But yeah,
Belamonte, Hemingway dies. he literally watched Joselito die. And I think it was like 12 years after Joselito's
He knew
death.
Hemingway. I don't think you mentioned that, but they knew each other to a degree. I
Oh,
think,
yeah. Well, Hemingway, I'm sure, being the big rock star that he was just like,
getting
hey, man.
backstage passes to meet the Matadors.
Yeah, he definitely had full reign with these dudes.
May I present to you Ernesto Hemingway?
But after all this stuff happened, I think it was 12 years after Joselito died that I think he finally hung it up for good.
Mm-hmm. Started a ranch to raise bulls.
Yeah, which I'm sure he had made enough money, like you said, being a bullfighter for as long as he was, that he turned into one of the richer people that could then start breeding these bulls. But he really found his peace being there with bulls, not fighting them, but just being friends.
He found peace up to a certain point.
Yeah, well, and then he really got tired of it. I think I read that the doc told him he had lung cancer, so he had to quit smoking cigars, and that was one of his favorite things.
Yeah.
So he comes back to his house and eats a lead sandwich, and that was sort of the end of Belamonte, but a guy that just really, he was the OG of bullfighting. He was the first big star that everybody had to see.
And some of it had to have done with some CTE or some brain damage, because they asked him, how many times do you think you got gored over your career? And he's like, if I have to ballpark it, probably about 50.
50. You had a horn stabbed into you, or you were fucking bucked by a bull 50 times in your life, and you're just like, yeah, we'll call it 50.
Yeah. Nice round number.
Yeah, I would say 100. Like, even if it only happened 2 times, it'd be like 100 times, dude. I got smashed by this thing at least twice. Like a million times. I don't know. Once was bad enough, twice was just like living in hell. And this happened to this dude maybe 50 times. He's just like, yeah, I guess that's the number.
All right, so then we move on to essentially who's considered the quintessential bullfighter, the most famous bullfighter in history. I didn't even know about this guy, so obviously I wasn't privy to really any bullfighting information. But we have a guy who I can't remember his name.
Do we want to hang on to Manolete to kind of give the people a spiritual
Is that what you were
boost?
Referring to earlier? Is that you want to hold, yes, we can hold off on Manolete.
What we're going to talk about may make you sad. Just understand that all the bad things that are about to happen to these bulls, Manolete was the guy, and there was a very strong revenge factor that I think really hit this.
Okay.
But these bulls that they were fighting, like you said, the 3 matadors, the 2 fights, bulls had to be between 4 and 6 years old.
No.
They
wouldn't let any bulls after 5, so they could be a little early.
Only 5? I thought it was 4 to 6, because they said a 3-year-old would be about 1,000 pounds, and that was like the first beginning.
They wouldn't go up any older. They really got stringent. They wouldn't go any older. I want to say maybe 6 was the cutoff.
Okay.
I mean, like not even to 6. So you would get, like you were saying, you would get these bulls, and the kind of the range they were looking for was, like you were saying, about 4 years old, and somewhere between, like, I think the minimum was 1,100 and something pounds, up
1,000 pounds or 460 kilos.
Yeah, and then
minimum
up,
size.
and then up to 1,400 pounds. That was kind of their cutoff for that. And I know you're like, well, that's still a shit. Well, yeah, that's a big fucking bull. But when you see a picture of them kind of next to the people, you're like, that's not as big as I thought it was going to be.
It's just because it's so muscularly perfect and
it's
so compact.
Yeah, but it's also only 4 years old.
Yeah, very true. It is still a baby.
And these were picked for very specific reasons. So the type of bull, the Spanish fighting bull, is known as the Toro Bravo. And it's a bull that's native, and it's probably bred elsewhere nowadays, but was only bred heavily during this time on the Iberian Peninsula. Fun fact, if you didn't know what it was called, the Iberian Peninsula is Spain and Portugal. And I think maybe Crete. I don't know if it was Crete or not.
I thought Crete was Greek, but maybe not.
Whoever owned that, I guess at the time, if it was considered that or not. So these bulls kind of differ. Like, they're the ones that have the huge neck muscles. They have a very distinct horn that kind of goes out not too far, but then kind of curves forward and then up a little bit. So it's not like a Texas Longhorn or any of that kind of crazy fucking horns.
No, I think it's probably pretty close to, well, maybe not what a Lamborghini bull looks like.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
They have what's called a morillo on their back, and it's just a big fucking hump of muscle, and that's what controls everything in the neck and, like, the upper shoulders.
Yep.
So, excuse me, that's like, if you had one muscle that was the most important thing to you, if you're a bull, that's it, because that controls your weapons.
Yes.
That controls your defense mechanism.
But, like, insane. Like, people might be, if you're in the States, you might be familiar with the bull, and you look and you're like, with the big, like a Brahma bull with the huge hump on its back. Think of it where, like, the neck is just fucking all meat. And
these fuckers look like Quasimodo.
if you watch the movie Ferdinand, it's an exaggerated version, but it's that type of bull. So again, Toro Bravo. So these bulls there's a very strict way that these bulls have to be raised. So from the time these bulls are born, they're kept in total, not isolation away from other cows, but kept out of any type of interaction with humans. And the reason is fucking nuts, and it's already going to explain to you how much the cards are stacked against these bulls from the fucking get-go. They don't want the bulls to have any interaction with people because they don't want the bulls to understand how a human is able to move on two legs.
Yeah.
They don't want it to capture its, movement pattern or its gait or anything like that. So when this bull finally does, the first time these bulls see people, in a weird way, are the runnings that they do before a lot of these matches. The most famous, and we're going to touch base on it a little bit later because it's a separate thing, is the running of the bulls. People probably know that one the most. It's where all the dudes in white with the red sashes run and hopefully trip and fall and get slammed into buildings by the bulls.
Idiot Olympics. That's the whole entire idea.
But that takes place in Pamplona.
Well, the amazing thing is nothing that happens to these bulls is going to be good. But their routine growing up is they have one bad day where they do see people on horseback as they're branded, as they're tagged.
Very young, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're calves at that point. Then they're just let out into these fields to live this majestic life with like as many cows around as they want.
They're so peaceful.
Yeah.
They said that like they wouldn't know what to do with the person if they saw one. And that's kind of the point, is they don't want them to get familiar. But literally, it's the fucking Ferdinand thing. They're very calm. They're very docile. They're just living their best life. They're out there sniffing flowers and laying under trees and fucking drinking water. All that good shit. So they do have these great lives up until 4. But these great lives have a sinister idea behind them.
There's an end that they're not seeing.
Yes.
But just to think that a big, strong, just ginormous animal like that has the capacity for a memory that could start to look at a 2-footed human being and see its movement patterns.
Keep a file in there to be like, if this thing ever fucks with me, I know how it moves, so I know how to catch it if I'm ever forced to do it. And the people that are, these matadors and who pick these bulls are just like, yeah, we don't want that.
Well, what I kept thinking about upon learning this is, how many guys do you think had to get fucked up in the bull ring before they finally thought about this? They're like, well, maybe if we don't move in front of them, the guys will stop getting killed. Like, do you? That seems to be a pretty tremendous leap.
There was a lot of testing, a lot of beta testing going on during this.
There were hundreds of bullfighters that had to have been killed because these bulls, as they were being raised before they came up with this 2-footed idea.
I'm sure there was a lot of trial and error with where to get these bulls. And after a bull killed someone, going back and being like, so tell us how this bull was raised.
Yeah.
They send out the fucking scientist squad, and they go out there with fucking clipboards and everything. They're like, tell us about this bull.
Just, it's incredible to think that was what they figured out, was that these bulls could figure out these movement patterns of anything on 2 legs. And like you say, the first time that they're introduced to this is the running of the bulls and when they're brought to these bull rings. So there's no other prior knowledge to start attaching these memories to, because for all they know, these are the first time that they've seen these 2-footed creatures.
Here's the thing too, is like we described this older running of the bulls when they would run them through town getting fucking stabbed and everything. These people are just running with these bulls. And in fact, they don't just run the 6 bulls by themselves. What they do is they'll run 6 other just regular steers. They'll run 6 of those.
At the running of the bulls.
Yes, but they also do this. I think they do it in other ones because these are like guide bulls, basically meant to just herd them. And so they'll usually allow 6 bulls, and then the 6 steers run with them, and then there's 3 other follow-up steers to basically, if there's a couple stragglers, to be like, hey, we're going this way. Those ones end up fine. And I think those ones are probably used over and over again until they start fucking getting used to attacking people.
I don't know. Because they do kill the bulls and then sell the meat to the fans afterwards.
The fighting ones.
Well, I mean,
don't know what happens
if you can sell
ones.
1,000 pounds of fighting meat, but all of a sudden there's 3,000 pounds of meat to sell because you slaughtered the other 2 cattle that you brought.
I'm trying to maintain some type of positivity as I tell this tale at him.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you mentioned tail, because these bullfighters, if they do a great job in the ring, after the bull is killed, their big prize that they walk out of these bull rings with, they cut off the ears and the tail. And
how you know if you did a great job is how many of them you receive.
Yeah, so you can either receive 1 ear, 2 ears, 2 ears, and a tail. In 2 years and a tail, you just fought like the fight of your life, and these people just absolutely love what you just did. I mean, I feel like you'd still be accomplished.
There was a situation in which they were like chopped off hooves too. I heard that, but I don't know. Well, I'm not putting it past it.
Yeah.
Ears, tail, hoof, like what the... Yeah.
It's very true. But you would still have to feel some sort of like measure. I don't know, because these guys are kind of egomaniacs. So if you walk off and you don't get 2 ears, 1 ear, or a tail, anything like that, are you not just satisfied that you live to see another day after fighting a bull? They're probably pretty sad about it.
Yes.
Which it's just absolutely incredible.
Well, and here's the thing too, deservedly so. Like there's no love lost for these fucking people, but they said a bullfighter was only as good as his last fight. That's all the people remembered was the last fight that they saw. Also, keep in mind that you're only seeing these things in person, so your only knowledge of how these, matadors' reputations are is how you've seen them and maybe performed in their last match or word of mouth.
There were actual critics though that would then do write-ups in newspapers in the culture section about like how the bullfighters perform. So if you couldn't get in to see it, you could basically read like the highlights.
Yeah, but they were all bullshit because they said there was so much corruption in that, because all it took was for these bullfighters who were making a ton of money to slip a little bit of money and being like, hey, that last review really didn't hit all the points that I was hoping you were going to make. Is this going to help you out? And you would get these like fabricated reviews because these people were being paid off.
I'd like to think, though, that was sort of later on. I'd like to think there was a little purity in the reviews for it. But yeah, you could be right.
I think there's maybe not as prevalent, but there's always going to be someone that's fucking doing that.
Well, when you get into a Belamonte Joselito scenario, those guys took over the shine for every place that they ever went.
They didn't need that.
No, they didn't
need any of that.
But it was everybody else that was trying to live up to those reputations and be the next Joselito or the next Belamonte.
Buying votes is nothing new, my man.
Yeah. So they were definitely greased them on the side. And these bullfights, now we're going to get into the structure, the corrida.
It's going to get dark.
Corrida.
It's going to get dark. It's going to get graphic.
Yeah,
you asked me not to get too graphic, but I don't know how graphic I'm going to get.
We got to give you a little bit. So just, try to soldier through this. We don't like it as much as you don't like it, trust me. But this is just a wildly interesting, and this is going to explain so much of why we feel the way that we do about these. But they were called terrizos, which just translates into thirds. And this was, you would have the first act, the second act, and the third act.
So the name for a bullfight is a corrida. And there's a season in which the corridas take place, and it is March to October. So it is March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. It's an 8-month season.
Is that not
it's Major League Baseball.
The hottest time in Spain?
Maybe it lends to it so they can all get out and everything. So you have, this huge season. And during these corridas, like Adam was saying, you have what are called terrizos, and they're the thirds. There's 3 acts. So we have the first act, which is called the tercio de veras. The
Suerte de veras.
The what?
Suerte de veras.
It's the tercio because it's third of lances. And tercio is thirds.
Yeah, it's just called the act of spears.
Okay. So there's another name for it called the third of lances.
Okay. So yeah, probably different areas. But that's where we really see almost like a callback to the aristocratic era, the guys that were always on horses with these lances.
Oh, and that allows us to explain this. It's not just the matador.
No, he's not out there yet. He doesn't show up till the third round.
So all of you that think that, here's the common misconception. I think people think that there's a matador in there and that they just release the bull in there to fight the matador. Oh, no. That would be too fair.
Yeah.
Much too fair. So you have essentially a team that is with this matador, and the team consists of the matador, which is, the translation is killer. So whenever you go to a restaurant, a lot of places like to name, Mexican restaurants like to name themselves the matador.
Yeah.
You're just walking into the killer. Yep. Just so you know, that's what it is. You have the picadors. Picadors are the lancers, so they're the ones that are taking place. There's 2 of them. They are the stars of the show during the Tercio de Varas or the Suerte de Varas.
Yeah, they're on horseback.
And they're on horseback. Originally, there have been a lot of horses killed.
A lot of horses.
And not only are the horses killed, but fun fact is because the horses would look at this situation and be like, fuck that, I'm getting out of here. These horses are blindfolded. And a little bit more recently, the horses have been provided essentially like a armored cape.
It's leather.
It's leather, but it's like, so, I'm not saying it's armor. I'm saying they consider it like that. It's a big leather skirt. And it's basically to try to prevent the bull from puncturing these horses' innards. Because during a time frame of, I think it was like 6 years or something like that, there were like 1,200 horses killed in these bullfights. Basically, these bulls would just go after the only spot between the two legs, the belly, and they would fucking hit these horses and basically just gut them in the middle of the fucking arena.
Yeah.
And so I want to say I did see something about it being like 1,200 or something like that during like a 5-year span. And that was when they were saying the most, had been killed.
Well, there were bulls, I believe, that were hitting like double digits in matches.
Yes.
That they were killing double digits of horses, so they just kept sending these.
There's a couple legendary bulls, and when we say legendary bulls, they're legendary, and they're not like a boxer that went on a streak of like beating matadors.
Yeah,
they didn't leave the arena.
No.
There were very few circumstances, like I could count on a hand, of times when the bull was presented. I didn't write down what it was called, but it was like the mercy thing.
Yeah,
where if the crowd felt that the bull was super brave and honorable and everything, then the bull was allowed to live, which I'm not sure how good the recovery was based on what we're about to discuss. Ew. But these bulls would be retired. They couldn't fight again for the simple fact that they had now seen what went down, and they would already adapt and be able to just...
They would go straight for the first guy that they saw.
I wonder if it took the first bull that was allowed to live, and then it was like the gladiator thing where they're like, we're bringing him back, El Diablo, and people are like, fuck yes. And El Diablo just fucked everyone up because he knew what was going down. And then they're like, maybe we can't do this anymore.
They bring El Diablo back, and he goes for the first 2 rounds, and then they're announcing the Matador, and he just walks over and stands next to where the Matador comes into the bull ring. Like, he's just like, I'm going to wait here. Yep. I have a feeling something good's going to happen to me if I wait here.
As I recall, someone came out here last time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I killed that guy, too. I'm just going to kill this one quicker.
So, yeah, you didn't have repeat performances from anyone but the fucking Matador. So during the act of spears, you would have 2 of the picadors on horses with lances. Now, the spear points on these lances, the way I looked at them, maybe you can correct me, about the thickness of one of your fingers.
29 centimeters in length. Then I believe there was like another...
It was 9 centimeters was the tip that was usable, because it had that crossbar because they didn't want to go into...
Yeah, it had the hilt on that, too.
Yep. So the spear point was 9 centimeters long, and it was like a pyramid point on the end, which you're like, well, that wouldn't be, that wouldn't puncture very easily. It would puncture, and the whole point of is it's leaving the point looked as thick as the actual like spear. What do you call the fucking handle?
Yeah. Well, so the idea behind it isn't to kill.
No.
The idea behind it is just as you alluded to.
Thank God it's not to kill.
It's just puncture. Well, you can't kill something in the first round if you have 2 more rounds.
That's true. So these picadors, they're warm-up matches. Think of it this way. These 2 first rounds, these are people that are supposed to prepare the bull for the Matador. You're like, what do you mean prepare the bull for the Matador? Well, here's what we mean by prepare. So the picadors are on these horses, and their job is when the bull comes after them, or I don't know if they chase the bull, but their job is to stab the bull with these fucking lances in that fucking huge muscular hump on the necks, and basically to start letting the blood flow, because you wanted to get that blood going to weaken the bull.
Yeah, that's your life. It's lifeblood. Yep. I mean, that's going to zap you of anything you have.
So you're punching these big ass holes in the back of this bull's neck, and it's supposed to like sever also the muscle and the sinew to weaken the bull's neck so it can't hold its head up as much. I'm sorry, does this not sound fucking suspect?
Well, and the whole thought behind that is if a bull has the full use of that muscle and they dig their head down to gore you or anything like that, they're going to throw you 20 or 30 feet just with that muscle being that strong. Not only that,
when that bull lowers its head to go charge you, the faster it can get its head up, like if it realizes that the cape is there and it has all that muscle, quick pivot just to swing its head. That's why when it charges through, it has to like recover and pick its head back up. So you have these guys, and they said that on average, this would result in an 18% blood loss, just this stage alone. You're like, 18% doesn't sound like, that's a fifth of your blood.
Yeah, it's a ton of blood, and it's also, you have this weakened muscle. Once you've been, stabbed, you've run around that much, you've lost that much blood.
A major league right-handed pitcher, and just having the teammates just like smash and fucking punch that guy's arm and shoulder before he goes out to pitch.
Well, and as all that's happening too, your lungs are moving at an advanced rate. Your heart is beating even faster.
You're
which
trying
is
to use that thing
adrenaline.
to bull over horses and attack these guys that are attacking you.
Yeah.
Again, this is the first fucking time that you're having human interaction outside of running yourself to the arena. So you're like, what the fuck is going on? And all of a sudden, these guys are stabbing at your neck.
Well, and their justification for this, like you said, the whole idea behind it is that the bravery of the bull is tested, is their thought process.
And it start to agitate it. They're starting to get it in a situation to...
they're trying to wear it down to a certain point, but they just call it bravery. Like, if you're willing to fight off like some of those toros did, where they were tearing through horses left and right.
Is this the old, like, God never hands you more than you can handle?
Yeah.
He's testing you. He's just testing these bulls.
Well, you're not testing for bravery. You're just... like, he doesn't want to fight you.
Yeah.
He's not in there to fight you. He's so scared by the cheering fans and these things that he's never seen before, and these guys stabbing him in the back, that everything is just completely draining out of this
trumpets fucking calling people out, and you're just like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, can you imagine 5 straight minutes of this?
They said they would let them out of a tunnel, because they would run them into the arena. Then they would have to put the bulls away, because you can't have all of them running out there at the same time. They would then put them in a dark room, and the only opening was into the arena, and it was like light at the end of the tunnel, and they would run out there and be in the middle of just fucking chaos to them.
Yeah, there were some of them that had outside pens, but it was literally just like a kill line where it was 2 concrete walls, and they were just funneled down in.
Like, and imagine you're trying to describe it. Like, so what happens in the first act? Well, the bull gets out there and you get 2 guys with spears on horses. Fuck, man. Like, those horses are fucking brave. Oh, no. We blindfold the horses.
They don't want to be a part of this either.
Yeah.
But you hear that and you're like, no, that's not how a bullfight works. But that's just the first round of a bullfight that nobody hears. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the bull at that point is just so terrified and stressed out that after a good 5 minutes of that, the adrenaline has waned. Mm-hmm. And that's where we move into the second act. I have it as the Suerte de Banderillas.
The Tercio de Banderillas.
Okay. Yeah, it's the act of the Banderillas is to...
Third of small flag.
Yeah.
And the act of the Banderillas.
Well, the flags are the Banderios.
The guys are called flagmen, or in bullfighting, they're the bandoleros. I'm sorry, I'm just butchering that.
Bandolerillas is the guys, I believe. Oh, no, you're right. The bandoleros is the dudes. The bandolerillas is the hooked.
Yes. And those stem from the wedding ceremonies when the bride would come out and have it decorate and everything like that. So if you've ever seen pictures of a bullfight where you have the guy, like, looks like he's holding the big colorful, they look like fucking piñatas.
Yeah.
Dowel things, and he's like holding them above his head and pointing them downward. So there were 3 bandoleros, and they each had 2 of these, what they called darts. And the darts were actually barbed, so once they stuck into the bull, they couldn't be pulled out. The other point of that is because they would, when, you know, I don't know if they were hinged originally, because they said there was a situation in which it stuck. So one of these guys stuck the 2 barbs. And again, there's 3 of them with 2 barbs each. So their point is when the bull is charging him, they move out of the way and then stab these things into its neck. They stick in it and stay. It used to be where these things would stick straight out of the bull. So if you look at older ones, you'll see all these things sticking out of the neck of the bull or the back. And the bull went to go against a matador, right?
No, the actual other bandolero was going to stab it, and since it wasn't hinged, it was sticking straight up, smacked him in the side of the head and blinded him. So not because this was too dangerous for the bulls, but because one guy got blinded by the design. That they're like, well, we need to put a hinge and a hook on this so we can just stab it into him and it'll hang off. And then it'll
fall flat. So now if you ever see pictures of a bullfight and you see all the colorful shit hanging off the sides, those are basically barbed points sticking into the bull. The point, again, is to weaken the muscle, and you're opening up wounds, and then the barb is bent over, opening these wounds to allow more blood.
Well, and it's to pick the bull back up, too, because as you're getting hooked with these and you're running around, you're feeling them slap against your side, or you're still feeling them stuck into you.
Yeah.
It's immediately you're back to alert and pissed off because you can't shake these things off. It's kind of like putting something on a dog's back and it immediately will shake it off, or something puts something on your head. Imagine that you have these hooks that are buried inside of you, and then as you're running to try to get away from them, they're slapping against your sides. You're just going to be on high alert for anything.
And at this point, the bull is going after these guys, but you have 3 of these guys. And in a bull ring, if you've ever seen one, they have like these at certain points kind of closer to the wall in certain areas.
Safety dividers.
Yeah, they have these dividers that are basically just these wooden dividers, and they can hide around behind them at certain points. So you have these 6 guys in this ring that are running this bull back and forth between them and then stabbing it with these things. So it's still fucking running, bleeding more because it's got its heart pumping, and just getting more tired.
Which would be incredible because you always, if you've ever seen like any highlights of like a fighter, even when they do a dramatization, and you see the way that a bullfighter is bringing a bull through his cape and doing all that, the bull still looks like it's pretty full of energy. Well, at this point, there's
Anytime you don't see, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, in any of those images, you hardly ever see that shit sticking out of its back, and you hardly ever see any blood on it.
Or it just looks like it's decoration.
Yes.
And, I mean, these works of art that they see, just, there's sculptures of them. I think that there's like a bunch of old cave paintings that they found that were just beautiful. White Goodman taking the bull by the horns, that beautiful piece of art that was just a metaphor.
That's me.
Like
it's also the way I handle my business.
Like, that's where you get the term "take the bull by the horns," is these pictures and these old paintings where it's controlling the bull, and that's what the matador is doing the whole
strength
third
bull.
round.
Man against nature. You got this bull that's just in there to kill and everything. And it hasn't at all been compromised by its upbringing or anything that's happened in the last 10 to 15 minutes. All right, speaking of being compromised, I gotta go pee.
Okay.
Well, hey there, all you sexy historians. How you guys doing?
It is time for
socials.
Where can they find us on Instagram?
If they want to follow us, they can find us at Historically High Pod on Instagram.
That goes the same for Threads as well. You can also find us on Twitter.
Tell them about Twitter.
Historically High. That's Historically HI on Twitter.
And if you want to email any of your comments or suggestions, where can they find us at, Adam?
At Historically High Podcast at gmail.com.
Gmail. All right, and back to the show. All right. Full hearts, empty bladders can't lose.
No, unless you're a bull.
That's true.
Unless you're a bull, then you almost can't win.
And now we enter stage 3.
Yeah, stage 3 is a rough one. I don't know.
As if it hasn't been in comparison up to this point. It gets even fucking rougher.
I mean, yeah, that's where I was headed. I don't know which one would be worse out of the first two, but I feel like this one, not only just for the death factor of it, but just I'm sure
the celebration of it is pretty fucking disgusting.
Well, and I mean, if a bull has that good of a memory, I wonder what its emotions are like. Like, I wonder if it even has a chance to feel emotions, or it's just nothing but panic. But it's almost like these guys are coming to the end of their life from the blood loss, and then they're just kind of shown around. Like, just the disrespect is in the third round every single time.
So we come to the Tercio de Muerte, which is also called the
Suerte de Matar, or the Act of the Kill.
And the Third of Death. So this is when, lo and behold, Mr. Matador, he finally steps into the ring.
After having a steak dinner, 3 cigs, a cup of coffee, maybe some grapes.
I'm sure he's been watching this. Do you think they watched the first 2 rounds to kind of get a gauge of the bull and everything there too?
They got a guy that'll come back when they're in their dressing room and be like, hey, they just scored some big hits. This is going to be an easy night. Like, go out there and really hot cock this one.
I was going to say, that's like the equivalent of like during a boxing match, having one guy been out, the entire training team has just been wailing away on this motherfucker. He's barely standing, can't breathe. He's been cut a couple times. Why don't you go out there and finish him off?
It's like the first 3/4 of the Globetrotters game, and then when they're just up and you can just showboat for the whole rest of the time.
Pretty much. So the Matador, as per tradition, comes out with the muleta and the estoc, the cape and sword.
Yeah.
And as he comes out, this is basically where he has to earn his meal. And you have the bull that has been harpooned at this point, been stabbed in the back, been run around. It's fucking tired. And his job is to basically entertain the crowd by controlling this bull, showing its... I hate the fact that they kept be like, showing its bravery and everything. And
you're showing its fight or flight response is all you're showing.
Yeah.
It has to be brave because there's nowhere it can go. It's in a literal ring surrounded by a bunch of noisemakers that it's never seen before. Mm-hmm. And all you have is some asshole standing over there waving to the crowd and waving a cape at you that's... a gray cape. He's in gray. Everything's gray. You don't know what's going on.
Wearing the suit of lights.
Yeah, the suit of lights is a wild term. They said sometimes it took like up to an hour for these these matadors to get dressed.
Mm-hmm.
That's
just
too
back
much.
there primping the shit out of themselves. But yeah, I mean, this is the only part that ever gets shown. Mm-hmm. If anybody's ever shown a bullfight or even a reenactment or a dramatization or a cartoon or anything,
Tito Santana was a bullfighter in WWF. He was many things, but one of his gimmicks was an actual bullfighter.
All right.
Which sort of, I mean, if it did happen in South America, I think Tito was from like Central America.
I'm sure they do the research, right?
Yeah.
There's no cultural misappropriation as far as
I'm sure wrestling has never culturally misappropriated anything.
So at this point, this is where, you're seeing what everyone thinks of in a bullfight. You're seeing the bull charge the matador, hit the cape, it flows over him, and what does the crowd shout? Ole! That's where you get ole from.
Is that really what they... Oh,
yes,
okay.
After a good pass.
I did hear it.
After a good pass, the crowd would shout ole. If it was boring or felt like he wasn't getting the job done, you would hear boos from the crowd. I mean, it was sounds like it was like a Philadelphia Eagles game.
Which, how crazy is that? Yeah, it is a Philadelphia Eagles game because these guys have bulls running at them at full speed with horns and ready to attack these muletas that are 6 inches away from their body. And these fuckers are booing because they're not doing it fantastically enough. Like, that's too much.
So, I mean, there's not much any more pomp and circumstance to what they do. So the matador has 15 minutes to actually complete the fight and kill the bull. So after the first 10 minutes, there is I'm trying to remember what the sound is, but it's a blast. Oh, estocada.
Oh, the estocada is the finish.
There's 3 of them, though. Oh, the estocada is the finishing move. That's right. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a trumpet blast at 10 minutes. There's another trumpet blast 3 minutes later, and then a trumpet blast 2 minutes later, bringing the total to 5 or 15. Sorry, and the move that it's the move. There's not another finisher. It's not like each matador has one doesn't have the stunner, one doesn't have the rock bottom, one doesn't have the pedigree or the fucking tombstone pile driver.
Well,
there's a move,
and the whole idea behind the cape is the kind of cheat that I don't know if is really easy to understand that these guys manipulate is since the bull's eyes are sort of on the back or on the sides of their head, there's blind spots that they have. Mm-hmm. So the idea is to make sure that you're standing in a bull's blind spot and it's completely focused on the cape. And you bring that spot closer and closer to the blind spot, the cape, until you're just there within that 6 inches. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're staying in the blind spot, it's not going to notice
able to raise its head as quickly. So once that head goes down, it's going down to charge, and the bull is basically looking at the ground. And it's all meant to bring the bull in close and kind of build a pattern and a rhythm, because the way that these things are ended is called like you said, the estocada. Estocada. The estocada is a move in which while the bull is passing, while it's simultaneously going through the cloak, the matador leans over the bull's back and plunges the estoc between its shoulder blades, and the whole goal of it is to pass down and sever the aorta.
But to get there, you have, they set a coin size, I'm assuming like a 50-cent piece size hole that you have to hit between bone and muscle to get into that, to hit the estocada right. And trying to do that with a charging bull with one hand going straight down onto it is just fucking impossible.
And not only that, it's so impossible that it doesn't happen more often than not. So what's happening is these guys are trying to stab, and the sword is bouncing off of the bone and everything. There was an instance where the sword bounced so hard when he stabbed, it flew out of his hands and impaled someone in the stadium in like the first couple of rows.
It's cost of doing business. If you're there cheering for it, unfortunately, shit will happen.
A lucky fan is going home with a souvenir.
On the back of their tickets, it says that the stadium or the bullfighter is not responsible for any injury that happens there, I'm sure.
So that was essentially a big point, is how many of these bullfighters ended their fights with these estocadas? Well, not a ton of them did. It wasn't as frequent as you would think. Being shown as you'd think every bullfight ended like this.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't like a move where like the bullfighter would swipe at the bull or stab it while it went past every time. It was one move after the bull had been completely exhausted and the crowd had been built to a fever pitch that it was time to do this. And when they missed doing this, they had to then come in with a backup, which was called the descabello.
The dagger.
The dagger. And basically the dagger was did the Matador have that?
Yep.
and
pulls it out of his trunks.
Yep. And then he would have to try to like stab from the side to sever the spinal column.
Yeah, sever it from the brainstem, which doesn't always kill them. So
it paralyzes them.
Yeah, it would get very tricky at that point. And at this point, the bulls would succumb to basically like dry drowning just because their lungs are working so hard. They would have heart attacks. Or they would be
filling up. And if you missed that estocada, you could still stab in there and get into a lung or two lungs, and they would be drowning
blood
in their
just
own
drains
blood.
in and you drown on your blood.
Unfortunately, the photos that I did see were a progression of the bullfight. And watching that last one, and I'm sure this wasn't, uncommon, but watching it just lay on its side, clearly still alive, but literally its mouth just covered in blood and everything like that. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. Why are you cheering?
And so if it came down to this Descabello, where they basically paralyzed these things and then allowed them to die. I don't know if there was another finisher that came up. This wasn't a horse on a track where someone was coming in with a 30-06 to put fucking... Mr. Ed down.
The final and eventual thing that they didn't like doing because it just caused a massive amount, but they would just have to come in and slit the throat.
Okay, yep.
Which is terribly gruesome, but if you stuck with us through everything else...
That was a dark mark on a matador.
Yeah.
If it ended up coming down to that, it was
you weren't getting an ear.
failure.
You sure as shit weren't getting a tail.
Yeah, definitely not. And so after this, and we're not going to spend any more time on this because it's as fucking simple as disgusting as that. Afterward... usually the bull would get pulled out of the arena, dragged out of the arena by 4 mules or donkeys.
Yeah, they bring a chain out, they'd wrap it around its horns, pull it out with the burros.
If the Toro was extra brave, they'd give it a victory lap by dragging its dead carcass in a loop around the ring first, while the crowd applauded it because it did such a good job.
If we know anything about history, dragging something around to people cheering is always
the ultimate sign of respect.
Total respect.
They got a victory lap.
Yeah, ask Achilles about that shit.
Yeah. So and then again, hey, guess what? If this is the first one of the day, you still got 5 more of this shit. 5 more of these things to watch.
That's where I don't understand. Like, even the people that are diehard and love it, it has to be such an adrenaline dump to watch something get murdered in that sense that how do you have enough left in the chamber for 5 more times?
And to be able to tell yourself that, like, what you're watching, like, is somehow a fair fight.
Is okay.
It's sporting in any way.
Yeah, the fact that they try to pass this off as a sport is beyond me, and even art.
And here's the thing, too. The majority of people in Spain are against this.
Not a fan. Yeah, we'll get into... I guess we can get into the numbers kind of now.
And the way that this thing is even propped up is not only is it subsidized by the Spanish government, because is bullfighting their national sport?
I would assume so.
So not only is it, and we're going to say that because I do want to say I heard that it is. You're going to check me on that, right?
Yeah, I was going to pull up some of the numbers and just kind of go through just the crazy amount of almost like this is where you see the cultural aspect kind of come into it and fight through. And that's why it probably lends to the idea of it being the national sport. But between 2007 and 2014, the number of the bullfights decreased in Spain by 60%, which to me seems like a pretty rapid descent as far as getting further along.
Well, and here's the kicker. Is it the majority of it being propped up with people watching it in the stands and everything like that aren't even people that live in Spain. It's people coming in to see the spectacle. And, tourists.
Yeah, and it's...
Same reason, like, look at the running of the bulls. Like, you look at it, like, a lot of white people.
Yeah. The whole idea behind just how it's dropped off is the government and like some of the local governments, the regional governments,
the national game of Spain.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not even going to call it a sport. We're just going to call it a game at this point.
A game where somebody dies. But there's been legislation passed in certain areas to ban bullfighting, but the Spanish I guess, Supreme Court, whatever their equivalent is,
whatever,
has ruled that it can't be outlawed because it is a cultural tradition.
It's a form of artistic. It's either the cultural or artistic or something like that. It's a form of art.
Which the Spaniards, on the whole, for bullfighting, back when the popes were in charge, they would put out bans on bullfighting, and everybody should be like, fuck you, dude. You can take a lot of stuff away from us, but you're not taking bullfighting away from us. And this was multiple... popes that tried to make this happen, and they were just like, yeah, whatever. We're fully invested in this sport. We're gonna do that, and it's the same thing with the government. But like I say, a 60% decrease means that there has to be some sort of a falling off Just the respondents that they get to some of these surveys that they have tend to skew that younger people are checking out of bullfighting, and I'm sure it's because the younger generation is just more apt to understand.
There are so many more options that don't involve basically killing an animal.
Yeah, do you want to go to the bullfight or do you want to stream Netflix? Like that's a question now.
Easy decision.
Yeah, you don't gotta get
You
dressed.
want to go to the bullfights, or do you want to sit on this pineapple tonight?
And see,
I mean, the pineapple is essentially going to be a little bit less scarring mentally. I think might be a little more physically, but
well, and the big hit was during the pandemic, the lockdown. Everything was canceled, and the Spanish economy, like you said, it runs partially on bullfighting. So the government compensated their losses right around 700 million euros, which is just crazy to where a bunch of people signed a petition just to say, hey, let's not rescue this. Like maybe this is what we need to let this die. But they still did it. Just going on the way that some of these, like that it looks, people have done surveys. 1,001 Spaniards were questioned if they wanted to ban bullfighting. 35 were opposed to banning it. 10 didn't know. 2 refused. So 52% said yes. Unfortunately, that's just a poll of 1,000. So, you don't really know who was asked, anything like that. But a strong majority, 78%, answered that the corridas should no longer be partially subsidized by the government. So that's more people coming out and being like, hey, if you're going to do it, cool, but let's not prop this industry up. Like, let's not continue to give these guys bailouts as they're dying off and they're having less bullfights. Maybe let's just let it die if it's going to die. If it can't stand on its own 2 feet, why are we propping it up? Like, I get that it's culture, but if you have to do that, like, what is the...
Well, kind of looking about what you have up there. So back in 39 to, 75?
Yep.
So this is at a time, and if anyone's unfamiliar with World War II or the details of it, so Spain did not take a side. Spain was just kind of doing its own thing.
I mean, they were rooting, I think, for one side.
Well, they had helped out essentially early on to help train the, Luftwaffe pilots and everything. But,
that's why I think they were probably...
And I think Franco was kind of squashing shit in house. So you have Francisco Franco, who the Nazi regime did help come into power as the dictator from 1939 to 75. And he actually used bullfights kind of as a resurgence, not as like a thing about, cultural pride, but basically to squash protests against his regime. It was a distraction. We've seen that type of shit in Rome where if you just distract and everything, that's why you would have during transitions of power, these big festivals and games could be like, everyone stop thinking about the new guy in office, give him some time. Everyone just watch, these murder games.
And I don't like to give dictators really credit for a lot of stuff, but in this dilemma in the thought process, if you're going to have a large scale protest that a lot of people are going to hear about, but then you just schedule a bullfight on that exact same day and it draws 10,000 people away from that protest, or if everybody's like, oh man, I want to go protest today, but I heard that Manolete has a bullfight today, I'd rather go see that. Like, you're taking away numbers from the protest, but at the same time, you're waving something else to distract the populace.
Giving some of the people what they want.
Yeah.
So then you are ingratiated to these people as well, at least a faction of them. The number of bulls killed yearly, and if anyone was like, well, I don't know about bullfighting, I don't see it a lot or anything like that. How bad can it be? How widespread can it be? The number of bulls killed for bullfighting per year is like around 250,000.
Still?
I don't know if still within the last decade, but up until the point when it dropped off in popularity majorly, it was around 250,000 bulls killed yearly. That's killed yearly for something that not all people even knew was still fucking going on, or knew the lengths that like these bulls were actually being killed each and every event. I think there's probably also a belief for fucking some of this, and like some people listening to this, is that, like we were saying earlier, like bulls got extra chances, or if they won, it was like, great, that bull survived, he gets to retire and everything. No one won.
No, and that actually is the perfect lead-in to our talk about our star, our one shining moment of, hey, maybe this sport's... The bulls get their comeuppance sometimes. Maybe they get their revenge.
Not their comeuppance. That would mean the bulls.
Yeah, I guess that's the wrong word. But the bulls, the revenge of the bulls.
The revenge of the bulls.
So,
revenge de los bulls.
I love this dude's name, and Manolete sounds pretty badass. But when you're competing with Manuel Laureano Rodriguez Sanchez, like a 4-name name is so fucking smooth just to fire it off.
It is, but that's not the crowd is going to be like Manuel Laureano Rodriguez Sanchez. It's Manolete.
Well, it's very hard to chant 4 names, but at the same time,
Do you want it to be Paul Levesque, Paul, or Triple H?
Triple H always simpler. But Manolete was a character that was so far away from Manuel's like actual personality. The guy was a recluse. He didn't like a lot of show, but as soon as he entered that bull ring, he was Manolete. Mm-hmm. He took on the persona of a guy who just everybody loved. I mean, I think I heard comparisons to Jordan, LeBron, just a guy who rose to fame pretty quickly. And part of his big deal...
At one point, he was the wealthiest athlete in the world.
He was, yeah. In 1974, he was worth, I believe it was $4 million. In
1974.
Yeah. Actually, it might have been way earlier than that. No, 1940s, yeah.
That's still... Okay,
1940s Spain, $4 million is even crazier.
Yeah.
Like, just...
For an athlete.
Yeah.
I mean, there were people that definitely had more money than that. But yeah, for an athlete, and not only that, but not even a mainstream athlete. Like soccer, like football was going on in Europe and shit like that too.
Yeah.
But to have the wealthiest athlete be a fucking bullfighter is insane.
And he performed, they said, in every major bullfight, or every major bull ring, including the big one in Mexico. Mm-hmm. So the guy was around. The guy was a must-see man. I think they said that at one point he had... I'm going to be wrong with this number, but I'm just going to go with it with just blind confidence. I think they said it was 90 matches in 6 months.
No, I heard something similar.
Okay.
It was an obscene amount in a 6-month period.
Yeah, so you're going out there day in and day out. You're fighting 2 bulls.
If you could use that number, then I'm going to use the number that I heard, that some of these in the peak of bullfighting were earning $100,000 per bullfight.
Okay. Well, and I mean, the only reason that I would say is maybe that's not super right is... If he had 90 matches and he was making $100,000 every time, that would be
taxes, dog.
Huh?
Taxes, dog.
Yeah, I guess they were.
That Spanish government's got his hand in his pockets.
Okay.
And maybe he was horrible with his money, dude.
Could have been.
Maybe he had $4 million in assets.
Well, you can't count the assets you put up your nose, right?
That's true.
Nose assets don't count. But he was a millionaire by 30 years old. And by 30 years old, he had put in so much time. His big deal... that just wowed the crowd and that they absolutely loved was his finishing stab was always led as the bull was coming out from underneath the cape. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like they were coming for the cape and they went for the dash. It was he was coming out, and as soon as he was coming out, that the stab, the matar was coming down, and it was going to kill the bull.
The matar?
The
stock.
Yeah, the Estoc, but the Matar kill.
Oh, okay.
So the final kill...
The Escatada.
Escatada, yeah.
There you go.
And he was just universally loved. But by the time he was 30, he'd been in so many bullfights, he's like, I really don't...
This guy went on like a world tour of bullfighting.
Yeah.
He went to Mexico and performed in Plaza de los Toros or something. South America, he went all over the world for this. So he was the Michael Jordan. He was the Michael Jackson. No, I'm not going to say Michael Jackson. Horrible. I meant to say Michael Jordan. Sorry about that. No, but he was literally, world famous. He was the Tom Cruise of bullfighting.
By 30.
Yeah.
So the man had to have started at a very young age. But by the time he was 30, the fans were almost like he was so good it almost bored the fans just because they knew kind of how the whole story was going to go. But
the expectation was to do better things each time. They needed to be impressed. It would be like expecting a basketball player realistically. Sorry about that. Realistically,
you just tried to shotgun me.
Huh?
You just tried to shotgun me. That was adorable.
Sorry about that.
We're not that close.
But yeah, to expect a basketball player every single time to be putting up 50 points. And not just that, 51 points. The next game, 52 points. Like I said, only as good as your last fight, but he felt so much pressure because, like Adam was saying, in his personal life, this guy was completely opposite. He was introverted, he was reserved, but when he put on the suit of lights or whatever the fuck it was called, he became Manolete. Just someone who was there to wow the crowd. And he was actually... I can't remember where it was that it happened, but he was in his second match.
Oh, no. We can't get to that yet.
Okay.
We got to talk about the his young up-and-comer, his Joselito, except for this guy, was a dickhead. And his name, I guess they all kind of are, but Luis Miguel
Don Maguera?
what the fuck is it?
Domingue?
Domingen, I think.
Okay.
So Domingen was a...
Maybe we'll just stick with Luis.
Yeah, okay, Luis. Hotshot on the scene. We just have Manolete retire. He's saying he went into retirement basically because I drove him there. Like, I was that good. I will take on Manolete at any point.
We now meet the heel.
Yeah. And that was his character. He said that once you saw one of his bullfights, you would never remember the name Manolete. So this was enough, and I'm sure the pressure of going out on kind of boring the crowd. Manolete wanted to come back, and he wanted to make some shit happen. Like, he wanted to shut this young up-and-comer up, but also he wanted to kind of restore his...
Is Jordan coming back? We're in the 4-5.
Yeah, exactly. And so they decided on this magical bullfight where these two, the retired vet that everybody loved, the goat of the sport, is coming to see if Luis can dethrone him and take that. And he goes out there the first time, gets dressed, takes him forever. Like I mentioned earlier, they apparently have a very weird appetite. They said that this started at like 5:40, and supposedly one of the only things that is on time in Spain is like a bullfight.
Yeah,
everything else is kind of like, show up when you show up. But this is like, this starts right at 5:40. So my man takes a nap, eats a steak, drinks some coffee. Sure, he had some cigs. Said he ate grapes. Don't really know. I guess maybe grapes were plentiful over there or something. But just an odd side dish with a steak. And then he just rolls out there to fight these bulls after they had already been beaten down and smoked and just absolutely torn up. He comes out there. He's
the most famous of all the weekend destroyed, extremely exhausted bull killers.
Yeah. And so he comes out, does his routine. The fans are kind of just like, oh man, that wasn't great. Like, we've seen that act before. You got nothing new. You didn't learn anything new in retirement. Like, that was all you got. So he comes off, and Luis comes out there and just dazzles the crowd. He puts on the performance of a lifetime. These people are cheering their asses off. At this point, I'm sure Manolete's like, well, fuck, if that's their reaction, like, I gotta really spice this up. I gotta do some shit. So Manolete comes out to fight his second bull, and he hears that this is going really, really well. He sees the bull out there. He sees the kind of position that he's in.
It's an extremely crowd-involved sport.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they'll show, it's not like where, it's not silent at all. Like, every single thing, like the Olays, on a good pass, the crowd will just keep going. And you'll know if you're going in the right direction just from simply the sound that you're hearing from the crowd. So they're going nuts at this point. He knows he's surpassing at this point Luis.
Yeah, well, Manolete, before he even gets out there, he sees the state of the bull, and he looks down at his guy, his handler or his manager or whatever. He's like, hey, watch this shit. I'm going to put on a show. And the manager's like, I don't know, man. That bull looks kind of unpredictable. Maybe just try to get this over with as soon as possible. And by that time, Mano was out there ready to let fly. And he was just kicking the shit out of this bull. His bull's name was...
The bull had already had the shit kicked out of it. He was kicking the last few pieces of shit out of this bull.
But Isalero was his name. And part of the show for Manolete was that he could bring the passes in like Juan did. But he would be able to loop them quick. So instead of one long run, rest, come back, one long run, rest, come back.
He was basically moving the bull around him.
Yes. He was controlling the bull to make these circles tighter and tighter and tighter.
Like letting it follow the cape as he moved it to the side and then let it go through the cape.
So Isalero gets lined up for this kill shot. He's getting I forgot the word again, the estocada. And as he's coming in for the estocada, maybe, I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. I feel like it was...
I could do it.
Yeah.
So Islero comes in and basically focuses, because you have to get them close for the estocada, and his focus just simply, as, it's a fucking wild animal. It just happens to luck of the draw. It focuses on his thigh instead of the muleta and plants its horn right up through good old Manolete's groin. And basically tosses him over it, right? Tosses him over him onto the ground, and then stomps the fuck out of his back.
Which, getting gored like that it's just got to be the fucking worst thing in the world. And the actual stab marks that are left is called a coronata. Mm-hmm. And Hemingway had talked about some of the coronatas that he had seen where there was one entry.
The stab marks from the horns.
Yeah, there was one entry, but there was 5 to 6 stab marks.
From where he had like spun on the fucking horn. And the horn, because it's angled, it's just tearing shit up in there and going like to different directions and everything. So it's just opening him the fuck up.
And not to mention, if that is bad, then this 1,000-pound bull stomps you with its hind legs after it just gored you. So that's just insult to injury. Crowd was absolutely mortified that they just saw this happen.
Well, think about that. You've seen a guy that basically up to this point, and I don't know how many times Manolete had lost or got gored and everything. Fucking the first guy, Belamonte, getting fucking gored 50 times. I would imagine at some point Manolete had gotten a hit or some shit. It might not have been serious.
Well, and the thing was Manolete's show for this match got everybody back onto their feet.
No one expected this to happen. This was the least likely scenario. It was just like, how fast is he going to kill it? Like, no one had probably saw this happen, at least in a long time, or he probably had, the great Manoletes coming back. He probably had this air of, like, to the crowd at least, invincibility. So when they saw their fucking bull-killing hero, basically the bull was like, nah, not today. Not today. Not for old Islero. I'm going out.
Well, and that's what makes me wonder why I wanted you to explain it, because I don't know if it was... I'm not sure how long Manolete's retirement was, but I wonder if a mixture of him not doing it as often and him trying to rev up the crowd again, because he got booed his first run, so the second time he was going to leave it all out there. I think it's a big
combination of a lot of different things.
And it was just his error over the bull.
I mean, that's got to be... I don't foresee a retired bullfighter going out and running bullfighting drills all the time. Maybe you might go...
practice probably
exactly.
Isn't the same.
I mean, once you're starting to come back, you probably got to sharpen your skills, but in your head, you're thinking like, I can still do this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not only have you fought, you now have the pressure of trying to up your game for this. You're older. You've been out of practice at it to at least some degree. Mm-hmm. And I think you probably do at some point forget that these things are unpredictable, if for the majority of your career they've been nothing but predictable in the way you've been able to control them. Because this thing, all it has to do is happen once. And then you got to fucking... I just imagine it happening as him basically turning Manolete into basically like a meat muppet just on its horn and everything.
Straight through the dick.
Yep.
Lifts it up, slams it down.
And then does the thing that you see in cartoons where like the cat walks along or the dog walks along the person's back and then jumps and smashes its face in the mud and then jumps across.
Well, then you have to think, like, after the bull stomped, do you think it took a couple steps and then like kicked its back legs up like a dog does after it shits and then just walked away?
No, I think the thing was so fucking tired. It's like, what just happened? Did I get him?
Yeah.
Did I get him?
Did I win?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't win because he ended up just succumbing to his injuries afterwards, which was also kind of the way that Manolete went out, because they tried surgery to fix him. But I'm sure once you get gored like that and then stomped, surgery is just like, hey, we gave it our best effort.
When was this? I don't think the technology for saving someone from there was an entire medical field actually
like an industry,
Spain, dedicated to horn trauma. Like, that's how fucking big bullfighting is. There's an entire medical field dedicated to horn trauma. So that was the end of Manolete, and the reason I think we ended on that is to let you know that there were examples of the bulls winning.
Yeah. Here's where Isolero loses, though. Fans were so angry that Isolero had killed Manolete.
That's right.
That they went and tracked down his mother and dispatched his mother
to make sure that nothing was ever birthed that vile. They called it like something like the demon bull or some shit like that. So like there were no other spawn for the demon bull.
They didn't want anything that violent ever coming down the pike again. It's like, wait a second. Was he really that violent? Is that what it was, or did he just finally win? Like, you don't claim that the matadors are violent. How come the bull becomes violent when he wins?
And here's the other thing too, is like the unpredictability of that whole thing. It's the luck of the draw, because who's to say that like a certain stab wound on that bull's side of the neck from the fucking lancers or something like that didn't sever a muscle or severed one on the other side to where the bull could only move in a jerking motion.
It just naturally pulled to the left.
Exactly. It could have been anything as simple as that.
There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that kind of go into being gored, and I don't know how prevalent it is now, just because it seems like it's so bad that you would hear about it. And largely, I think in the U.S., you have to like search out bullfights actually happening to see any highlights of them. Like it's not advertised unless you're in
like
that
documentaries.
world.
Searching for documentaries, it's pretty fucking slim pickings, even like because it's just not a thing that's celebrated.
Yeah.
And one thing, kind of going back to the matadors for the last thing, so. Since records have been kept since 1700, only 533 matadors have been killed. Now, I'm sure a lot of them have been retired or injured and all that kind of stuff, but that just doesn't seem like enough.
No, certainly not enough. And like per number of bulls killed compared to that is just, it's not even in the same realm.
But so kind of moving away from the actual bullfighting itself, there's another instance which people are familiar with bulls that is just fucking hilarious in itself. And it's the running of the bulls. And if you don't know what the running of the bull is, it is Pamplona, Spain. And from between July 6th and the 14th, they're basically doing a series of bullfights.
Well, it is the celebration of San Fermin.
Okay.
And San Fermin was a saint that was converted to Christianity and then murdered. He was basically held as a martyr, and he's like the regional saint of the area that Pamplona's in. And Saint Fermin, after he converted, like I say, he was taken away, he was killed. They say that he was beheaded, but part of the legend and what started the running of the bulls was that to be killed, he was cord wrapped around his legs, and then bulls dragged him over the cobblestone to kill him. But it's sort of conflicting because the guy, Saturnarius, was the one that converted him.
Yeah.
And they believe that he was actually killed that way, and that San Fermin was just beheaded. But it's kind of like those two things amalgamated.
It is, and it kind of also borrows. They borrow from already things. That's what legends do. They borrow from something pre-existing, so then people will believe it more. So that comes from the tradition of how they would get the bulls there anyway. So there was probably some type of mashup of it, like, oh, I can like hijack this story and just put myself into it. That's kind of the origination for it.
Yeah, and that's where we get the running of the bulls, because it is like the people jumping out there to run in front of the bulls almost signify like they're standing with San Fermin.
Okay.
And that's why the whole entire festival...
I wonder if there's something to do with the outfit. Like, because everyone wearing that outfit?
I believe that is where the white comes from for purity, and then the red bandanas that they wear is the blood of his blood being spilled.
Okay.
So that is where the outfits...
If that's not true, that sounds really good.
I'm pretty sure that was what I had heard and read.
So what they'll do is they'll take the 6 bulls that are going to take place in the bullfights, and then they'll have the 6 steers run with them. So that's why, like, when you're watching it, it seems like you're seeing a lot more bulls. Because when they just said the 6 bulls that are running, I'm like, I've seen more bulls than that run down the street.
It seems like it's a herd. Not
yes,
just
and it's in
them.
different segments. So that's where you get the stragglers running with the 3 follow-up steers that are basically, they're like pace cars. And then like meant to like kind of force them into the arena.
Pace cards and then sheepdogs to keep everything right. So every morning, it starts July 7th. Every morning, 8 a.m., there is a firework that goes off that lets them know, and it's actually like through the old historic district where they put up these fences.
Yep. Most of the time, it's either hemmed in by the buildings that rise right up from the street and everything, and then around the corners that if you've ever watched any scenes or seen any movies about it, there's fences where spectators can watch. There's an interior fence as well between that and where the bulls go, and everybody that's running, that's for their use in like medical staff, so they said the slats are big enough to where a person could get through them.
And it's happened where the bulls have gone over the slats and into the crowd before.
Yes, but like there's supposed to be like safe places where if the bulls are catching up, you can run behind this fence, and then the way that it's the bull's perception, it's like disguised, so they just keep because they don't know what the fuck's going on. They're just trying to run straight, and get through these people.
It's the same theory, I think, as those blocks that are in the bull rings, because they look the same as the other parts that are behind it.
Yeah, it's like
so the bull's depth perception
can't
figure that out.
So the rocket starts. That lets them know that like the first they're releasing it because not all the bulls leave at the same time. The pen is open.
The pen is open.
Fire another rocket, and that's like the first round of bulls have left.
Yep.
So that's the because people aren't starting right in front of the pen.
No. Well, you got to start running basically as soon as you hear that first rocket.
Yes. If the person in front of you ain't fucking moving, I'm shoving.
Yeah.
I'm going to hear the and I'm going to fucking already be taken off.
Oh, and I think it's something. Oh, where is it?
So the entire length is only 907 or 57 yards. That doesn't sound well, actually, it does sound like a lot. That's fucking more than 9 football fields.
Yeah, 875 meters sounds like a lot, but in our American brains, hearing 957 yards, yeah, you're like, that's 9.5 football fields that these guys have to run.
I wonder how many people have made the full run.
Well, so the average speed of the herd of bulls after 15? They leave, 15 miles an hour. That's much faster than normal humans can run.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention, they said weekdays, they get about 2,000 runners on the course. Weekends is 3,500. So you're moving in a big clump. It only as fast as that clump can move, and these fuckers are going 15 miles an hour running up on you.
This is what my brain is doing right now. The area that they let them go and the entrance to the bull ring, 957 yards. It's through narrow-ish streets.
Yeah.
When you start getting more people, imagine the first spots are definitely the ones closest to the arena, because people can say, I did the running with the bulls.
I ran 100 feet, but I did the running.
You can just say, no, you don't do that. You just say, I did the running with the bulls, the running of the bulls. You then have people, I just see people, like the dudes, like the fucking bro bachelor parties that are like, we're running with the bulls, fucking waking up hungover from the night before and not getting there till right where it begins. Yeah. And they're the guys closest to the fucking pens. The more people you get, the more it just fills up that area between the stadium. Like 3,500 people. Think of that stretched into a narrow corridor, how far back that goes.
Well, and the hungover guys show up and they're at the back of it. They're just like, fuck, I can see the bulls in the pen.
And at what point did they hit that number? And there were people that were like, okay, we can't do any more than 3,500. There's no fucking, they're too close.
Oh no, my friend. Oh no. The rules to get in to do it, very, very strict.
Yeah, you can't be drinking. So you can't be drunk at the time. You could be hungover.
Well, here's the deal. You have to be over 18 to do it. Nobody checks IDs. So if you look 18, I mean, I looked 18 when I was 12.
Is this the thing where they, like in Benchwarmers, where they hand him the piece of paper?
I am 12 with the $20.
Yeah, you just accept you're 18.
All you have to do is tell them you're 18. You don't have to prove that you're 18. So you can really be anything that looks 18.
Yeah.
Second rule, you can't be drunk. They don't breathalyze you or anything like that. They just let you out there. So if they come by and like, hey man, are you drunk? You're just like, no, it's 8 a.m. Who would be drunk by 8 a.m.? Well,
as anybody your mouth is stained fucking red.
Anybody that partied the night before would be stoned or drunk from the night before.
If you're going to have to, okay, question. If you had to be one or the other doing the running of the bulls, which one would you rather be?
Stoned. Because stoned I can run out of. Like, the endorphins will eventually kick the THC out of my blood and my brain. There's no really, like, you can't sober yourself up.
Your coordination takes a hit like that.
Yeah, that's also true. I didn't even think about that, because your legs are just jelly at that point. Like, it's not going to be good.
Here's what I imagine for you. How big are those slats in the fence? We would never do this, even if we were provided the opportunity to go do this. I would love to watch. You would do it?
I would do it the way you were talking about. I would run with the bulls where you and I would sleep next to the gates of the pen or sleep next to the gates of the stadium. And then we would just wake up and just roll over like 20 feet away and then run into there. But like, that's the only part that we would film.
Like Rocky, arms up and being like, I did it.
20 minutes of just that thought of like, how could you make it look that you were just tired? I would just start running laps in the thing before, so I really worked up a sweat for that last like 20 or 50 feet that we run in there, so it looks like we actually did it. That's the only way I would do it, because these people, they have a death wish. And I went into this, like literally as you were talking about this and introducing it, I had a 110% just mind change on these people. Because I thought that they were just the dumbest people on the planet. These people are fucking awesome. And you know why they're awesome? Because nobody takes dumb risks in life like Europeans do. I feel like we do some dumb shit. We jump out of airplanes.
I think there's a lot of non-Europeans doing this.
Yeah, I can see that. But like, we jump out of airplanes. We bungee jump. Like, there's a lot of risks that we take.
I think this is definitely a bucket list item for a lot of white people.
Well, there's just no man versus nature like things. Like, you don't just walk out and try to fight a bear in the woods. You're actually trying to outrun another animal, and that's a risk that doesn't pay off.
What it leads into, though. This is like the innocent thing before. This is like walking the animal to the butcher shop, but making a big celebration of it. So I have conflicting feelings. Well, personally, myself, I would love to get myself a nice little Airbnb right along the street, second floor, crack that window open, be sitting there puffing on a nice, just some type of nice Spanish, Spanish dank, whatever they have over there. and literally just hear those rockets go off and be like, so it begins. And just comment. And me and you do a podcast, sit in that windowsill.
Just live,
and here they come.
Call.
Oh my God, he's tripped. He's tripped.
Well, and that brings up another aspect of these very restrictive rules.
Ladies and gentlemen, real quick, if anyone listening to this is well-to-do and would like to sponsor some type of travel show, by all means, get in touch with us.
We're there.
I feel like it would be gold.
Yep. Yeah, we're a very dynamic duo here. But rule number 3, no sandals. I mean, that's a pretty good rule.
So do you think these rules were created out of incidents that had occurred?
I think as time went on, they just kept adding them because there's really only 4. And we're at 3, and 3 is no sandals. That seems like a pretty current rule.
It does, but you know that someone was running in sandals and got killed, and so they were like,
No, it'll be okay. I'll be fine. I run in sandals all the time.
There had to have been some type of, God, if that rule wasn't put into place until after the advent of the modern camera, can you imagine seeing a shot of someone getting launched and you just see 2 flip-flops flying off their fucking feet?
I love that you said that, because that rolls right into rule number 4. No media electronics whatsoever on the course. So no cell phones, because
no one's ever GoPro'd the running of the bulls?
I'm sure they've snuck them in, but again, just like, are you drunk? No. Do you have a camera? No.
Can you imagine trying to like look at you see the bulls in your forward-facing camera and you're like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Well, that's what the incidents were people trying to take selfies while running of the bulls, but they wanted to get the bulls in there, so that would cause these pileups, which we talked about how bad pileups of human beings are in the soccer disasters episode.
When you have about 6 tons of just fucking scared meat with horns running down the backs of you.
Yeah, but that's also not including the 1,500 people, depending on where you are in line, that are trying to get away from that. Yeah. So you're getting trampled by people before you get trampled by bulls.
Well, and speaking of getting trampled by people and bulls, 50 to 100 people each time that this occurs during this 6, 7, 8 day stretch, 50 to 100 people are injured. I thought that would be higher. That number does not touch the levels that I thought it should. And since 1940, only 15 people have been killed doing this. I don't feel like this is enough. That hasn't happened frequently enough for this to be a deterrent.
That's why I think I had the U-turn on them, though, because for as bad as this sounds, there's not a lot of people that are dying from it.
I appreciate your effort to try to find a silver lining in this whole thing. I feel like it's admirable. Did you know a guy from Glen Ellen, Illinois, was the only American that's been killed in the running of the bulls?
Good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's if you're going to be famous for something.
In your cap.
Yeah, you're the only American to ever die by bull.
Okay, so we touched on this before, but getting back to it. So and I think we have a very similar one. I think it goes without saying. In what circumstances would you be okay with bullfighting and even watch bullfighting?
If they just let him straight out of the pen and the matador was standing in there. Like, if it was
no age restrictions now, though.
Nope, no age restrictions, no restrictions other than maybe like...
I want this to be bull riding style, where you find you are celebrated for fighting or riding the meanest, nastiest fucking bull. The harder it is to ride, the more prestige there is. I want to see a situation... Did we touch on the fact that the reason that they kept it under like 5 years old was because as the bulls got older, they could get meaner and they would get bigger and stronger?
They just got too strong and too dangerous.
Yeah. I don't want a fucking age requirement. No. I don't want to any weight classes. All I want to do, and the only way that I would respect this, is if you had these guys in there, give them a sword. That's fair. That's the agreement, or that's the argument that we've had. Could you take on a gorilla if you had a baseball bat? You're going to get killed by... I feel like the gorilla's going to win a lot more often.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's like what I was talking about. I feel like the only way that I could really hunt a deer would either be with a bow, or if you just gave me a knife and you let me and that deer go head to head.
You're going hungry.
Or I'm going to die, or I'm going to kill him. Like, there's only 3 outcomes there.
That's true.
But it's more of a fair fight. I want to see a fair fight. I want them to juice these matadors up with so many steroids beforehand that they're just monsters. Like, they're coming out of their clothing. But to let that bull in and just have them go face to face, the matador is always going to have to come in and, like, start the shit. And so I feel like with him being the one advancing on the bull... So you still
feel like there shouldn't be... What I'm saying is I feel like there should be, like... These bulls should also be able to, like, repeat.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I feel like these animals, like, if you kill a matador and everything, like, you get the rest of the night off. You're not going to... I don't want it to be a situation where you're fighting all 6 matadors.
Go out and hump a couple cows. Can you imagine a bull
going 6-0 in one night? Okay, my proposal. The bull... Well, I don't know. You can't let the bull decide this. I don't know how you're doing this. But if the bull goes 6-0, the bull is retired and it gets its freedom. It gets to go bang all the lady bulls at once.
Just put out to pasture.
Yeah.
Like a fine racehorse.
Yeah.
It gets milked all the time. We're sending that bull semen out to just spread this dude's progeny. Like
So if you wanted, if that bull was so inclined and could give you a little head nod and be like, I'm going 6-0 tonight. I'm earning my freedom tonight. Let them do that. But think of how fucking I'm not saying that the slaughter van. This would not be a slaughter because you'd be seeing these matadors getting fucked up more often than the bulls. I think
all the time. I don't think matadors would win because as soon as, like I say, if he
that
has
right there shows you that this should not exist. Then that point that you just said is the simple fact that a matador could not win if these bulls were even just the bulls at 4 years old, not weakened, anything like that. You might get a matador get lucky every now and then, but it would be almost all bull all the time. And the fact that that's true is exactly why this shit should not exist.
Yeah, that's a very good point because you have to think that a healthy bull's endurance is going to be so much better than a human's.
If he's not having to not only get wounded, but having to run around for 10 or 15 minutes even before he meets the matador.
Yeah, so he's not going to be tired. He's going to be fresh. The matador is going to have to bring the fight to him because the bull's not going to charge him for any reason because he's never seen one of these human beings before.
Unless he's coming back.
Unless
he's coming back for another match, which is even better. Make the purses for this so insane. Like this guy is fighting the bull on the bull six match. And this bull has just been fucking up matadors. Yeah. Can you imagine, you might not have any matadors be like, we're not going to fucking fight this guy.
You get $1 million for every time the match goes on. So the 4th match of the night is worth $4 million. The 5th match is worth $5 million.
However many matches that bull has fought. And you get these large prize bulls that are doing this shit.
Yeah, so...
And then we'll see how fucking many of these guys want to step into the ring.
Well, you wouldn't be willing if you just saw this guy maim and kill 5 other matadors to be like, I'm going to go $6 million? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you just saw 5 examples of why you shouldn't do this, and $6 million...
The amount of money, that bull's not only more experienced now, that amount of money doesn't make that bull any less dangerous. No. If anything, that bull is now more dangerous. Yep. So it's like...
He learned how to do it. He's practiced. Mm-hmm. So I feel like
he's got tally marks.
Yeah,
they make tally marks in his horns.
Yeah, I feel like that would be a fair fight, and not even fair because obviously the bull would just run his shit every time.
But the fact that you're taking a bull and putting them in that situation against their will, it should be advantage bull.
Hey, maybe poke him every 20 minutes at night when he was trying to sleep the night before. Maybe do that. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Just maybe try to level the playing field a little bit. But like I say, Matador on steroids, naturally going to be more aggressive. There you go. Going to be very strong. It's going to bring the gap closer.
I want to see this. Yeah. We need to make this happen. Someone out there listening has the ability to make this happen. We're for it. We'll commentate.
I would watch the shit out of this one.
We'll be the voice of legitimate bullfighting.
I don't know if I could see 6 dudes die that fast. I don't know if I could see one, but
I'm not telling you. It would be a very short-lived series.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 to 2 episodes, but I feel like we could sell the shit out of those 2 episodes.
Oh yeah.
All right. You have any closing feelings on this? Is there anything that we missed?
No, I really can't think of anything that we missed, but this was a joy to do. And like Chris said, I kind of talked him into it, but it didn't take a whole lot of talking into. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. This is just a fun topic and something that is sort of hard to really find a lot of information on unless you go to
historically high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not a lot of game on the street just for this wild thing that is still popular to a certain extent.
Yeah, it still exists, and it still exists in a larger than should be capacity.
Yeah, so just remember, when you do see highlights of running of the bulls, they're always over 18, they're never drunk, nobody's wearing sandals, and no selfies are being taken.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, thanks again for joining us this week, and we will see you next one.
Peace.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for another episode. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe and like button. Follow us. If you didn't like what you heard, still hit that anyway, because we'll probably cover something in the future that you do like. Please follow us on our social media. Adam, hit him with it.
Our Instagram is historically high pod, historically high pod, and we are on Twitter at historically high. That's historically HI.
All right. And if you guys want to send in any feedback, suggestions, hit us up on those 2, or you can even do it on Gmail. It's historicallyhighpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again.
Peace.